So I want you to just visualize something right now. Just take a second and try to imagine the exact physical sensations of falling asleep.
Yeah, which is harder to do than it sounds, honestly.
Right. It really is. Because, you're lying in bed, the ambient noise of the house kind of settles, and your body starts to undergo this profound, heavy paralysis.
Almost like a stone just sinking to a riverbed.
Exactly. You are anchored to that mattress, just completely immobilized. But as your physical form is powering down, your consciousness does the exact opposite.
It's totally waking up.
Right. It slips out of that physical anchor. And within, a matter of minutes, the dense, predictable reality of your bedroom completely dissolves. And this vividly constructed, sensory-rich universe just boots up right around you.
It really is a vanishing act, and we accept it with almost zero critical thought. I mean, we just accept that for 8 hours a day, we completely abandon our physical environment to navigate what we assume is a hallucination.
And that casual acceptance really masks a massive, glaring biological paradox. Because science has historically categorized sleep as this restorative shutdown.
Oh yeah, like a biological reboot.
Right, to clear metabolic waste from the brain and repair muscle tissue.
Oh.
But if the brain is simply powering down for maintenance, why do we experience such extreme, high-definition sensory input?
That's the million-dollar question.
I mean, why do you wake up with a racing heart, just drenched in sweat from pure terror, or crying from an overwhelming sense of loss, or, feeling absolute euphoria? If the theater of the mind is supposed to be closed for cleaning, why is it suddenly staging this massive, full-sensory blockbuster production?
Well, the standard restorative model of sleep fundamentally fails to explain the subjective intensity of dreaming.
It really does.
Yeah, because when you look at brain activity during REM sleep, the visual cortex, the motor cortex, and those emotional centers, especially the amygdala, they are operating at metabolic rates that rival and sometimes even exceed waking levels.
Wow. So they're actually working harder.
Exactly. It defies the logic of conservation. I mean, if you want to rest a system, you don't run its most expensive software at maximum capacity,
No, of course not. Which brings us to the core of today's deep dive. We are systematically dismantling the idea that sleep is just a biological pause.
We're throwing that completely out the window.
We really are. We're going to explore a radically different framework today, drawing heavily from the paradigm-shifting concepts outlined in this text called the Tesla frequency, dreaming beyond the veil of reality.
It's such a fascinating read.
It's incredible. We are looking at Nikola Tesla's theories on consciousness, vibrational physics, and the possibility that sleep is actually an active daily mechanism for accessing dimensions that exist just outside our normal perceptual range.
And the implications here, they really alter the entire foundation of how we view human life.
Right.
Because you spend roughly 30 years of your life asleep. Under the standard model, that's 30 years of wasted unconscious downtime.
It's just totally gone.
Yeah, but under Tesla's framework, those 30 years are an active participation in the fundamental architecture of reality. It reframes sleep. Not as a biological necessity to just endure, but as the primary vehicle for human evolution and cosmic interaction.
So let's start with the foundational hardware here, like the brain itself. Because to understand Tesla's view of sleep, you first have to realize that he believed our modern understanding of the brain is completely backward.
Completely backward. We operate under this assumption that the brain is a generator. We think it produces consciousness, generates thoughts, and synthesizes dreams out of stored memories and, random synaptic firing.
Like a self-contained factory in our skulls.
Right, a localized factory. But Tesla fundamentally rejected that. I mean, he was a physicist obsessed with electromagnetism and frequency, and he applied those exact same principles to human consciousness.
He explicitly stated that the brain is not a creator, right?
Yes, he said it is a receiver.
So rather than a factory, it's more like an antenna.
Precisely like an antenna. Tesla viewed the universe as this infinite sea of vibrating energy. Every thought, every dimension, every potential reality exists as a specific frequency.
Okay.
So in his model, the human brain operates as a highly complex biological tuning fork. It doesn't generate the music you hear. It simply catches a signal floating through the ether and translates it into a format your consciousness can actually perceive.
So it's basically like assuming your TV is inventing the actors inside it, rather than just catching a broadcast from a station.
That is a perfect analogy.
Okay, but I want to challenge this right away. Because if my brain is just an antenna and it's not generating my dreams, who or what is broadcasting them. I mean, that implies a level of external input that is deeply unsettling. If I'm not the author of my own mind, what is?
Well, that's the necessary friction of this theory. It demands that we abandon our anthropocentric ego, you know? Let's look at the actual mechanics of perception. Right now, as you're awake, your brain is acting as a highly restrictive filter. Neuroscientists refer to this as the default mode network, or the DMN.
The DMN, right?
Yeah, the DMN is essentially a bouncer at the club of your consciousness.
I love that. A bouncer.
It is. It blocks out the overwhelming majority of sensory data and restricts your perceptions strictly to the Earth frequency, this dense material data you need to survive, find food, and not step into traffic.
Right, it keeps the dial locked on a single station so we can actually function.
Yes, but when you fall asleep, the DMN powers down. The bouncer leaves the door.
And chaos ensues.
Exactly. The rigid filter of waking survival relaxes, and the biological dial suddenly becomes fluid. Without that heavy constraint of physical waking focus, your consciousness is suddenly free to tune into the broader cosmic broadband.
Wow.
You aren't inventing the bizarre worlds you dream of. Your unfiltered antenna is simply picking up broadcasts from frequencies that are perpetually running parallel to our own.
That honestly reframes Tesla's entire biography for me. Because people talk about his genius as if he was just incredibly good at math, you know. But his actual methodology was almost entirely mystical.
It was very mystical.
I mean, the man conceptualized the alternating current motor, which is the invention that literally electrified the globe, not while grinding away at a chalkboard, but during a twilight walk in a park in Budapest.
Right.
He claimed the entire, fully operational 3D schematic of the motor just appeared in his mind. He could mentally run the machine, test it for friction, adjust the coils, all before ever touching a single piece of metal.
And he was unapologetic about this process. He didn't walk around saying, look at this incredible thing I figured out. He said, look at this incredible knowledge I access.
Accessing the broadcast.
Exactly. He believed there was a core of universal knowledge, and that in the liminal states between waking and sleep, the brain becomes highly permeable to that specific frequency of innovation.
And he actually developed techniques to hold himself in that state, right?
Yes, he'd hold himself in that hypnagogic state, that exact threshold where the waking filter drops, but the conscious observer remains, just so he could continuously download these schematics.
Okay, so if we follow the physics of this, an antenna needs a tuning mechanism. A radio doesn't just spontaneously change stations. There has to be a physical dial that shifts the resonance to pick up a new wave.
Right, there has to be hardware.
So, if the brain is the hardware, what is the biological mechanism that physically alters our internal frequency when we close our eyes?
We actually have a very specific neurochemical candidate for that dial. It's a compound called NN-dimethyltryptamine, which is widely known as DMT.
Oh, wow. Often referred to as the spirit molecule.
Exactly.
Which, frankly, is a fascinating intersection where hardcore psychopharmacology meets ancient mysticism.
Yeah.
But let's clarify the biology here, because we aren't just talking about some synthetic hallucinogen cooked up in a lab, right?
Not at all. DMT is an endogenous compound. It is naturally synthesized within the human body. We find it in human cerebrospinal fluid, in the lungs, and heavily concentrated in the pineal gland of the brain.
And it spikes at night.
Yes. Crucially, clinical studies have shown that endogenous DMT levels spike during specific phases of deep REM sleep.
So the brain is actively secreting a highly potent, reality-altering compound every single night.
Every single night.
Scientifically, how does DMT alter the station? Like, what does it actually do?
It comes back to that filtering mechanism. DMT shares a very close structural similarity to serotonin. When it floods the brain, it binds tightly to serotonin receptors, particularly the 5-HT2A receptors, but it also activates sigma-1 receptors, which regulate cellular stress and neuroplasticity.
Okay, so it's turning specific keys in the brain.
Right. Functionally, DMT completely overrides the brain's thalamic gate. The thalamus is that relay station we talked about that usually filters sensory input to keep you grounded in waking reality.
The bouncer.
The bouncer. DMT disables that gate. The dial just spins freely.
And what happens when that gate drops is remarkably consistent across the board. Like when you look at clinical trials of individuals administered intravenous DMT or even ethnographic accounts of indigenous ayahuasca ceremonies, the phenomenology isn't just some random assortment of chaotic hallucinations.
That is the critical data point right there. Because if DMT simply caused the brain to randomly misfire, the hallucinations should be entirely subjective and chaotic. One person might see a melting clock, another might see childhood memories playing backwards.
Just totally random static.
Exactly. But the reports are astonishingly uniform.
Right. Participants consistently describe breaking through this geometric tunnel and entering environments characterized by impossible hyperbolic geometry. And they report vivid encounters with autonomous sentient entities.
The luminous beings.
Yes, often described as luminous beings or guides or these intricate, shifting architectural constructs. And the defining characteristic of these experiences is the overwhelming conviction that the space they entered was more real, more crisp, and more objective than our waking physical reality.
Which perfectly aligns with Tesla's theory of a vibrational universe. Think about it. If you have uniform hardware, the human brain, and you introduce a uniform chemical key DMT, you are going to tune into the exact same frequency.
It's like tuning all the radios to 99.1 FM.
Exactly. The consistency of the DMT realm suggests it is an objective environment. The entities aren't generated by the individual's subconscious. They are native inhabitants of the frequency the brain has temporarily accessed.
I really want you, the listener, to think about those dreams where you visit a place that feels inexplicably profound, like a sprawling, complex city you've never been to, or a massive library, or a house with impossible architecture.
Everyone has had one of those dreams.
Yes. And the level of detail in those dreams, the texture of the stone, the complex social dynamics of the people there is staggering. The idea that your resting brain is just spontaneously rendering that level of novel architectural and social complexity on the fly is almost harder to believe in the alternative.
It takes so much computing power.
Right. And the alternative being, the DMT in your system simply allowed your consciousness to perceive an environment that already exists.
It removes the entire burden of creation from the sleeping brain. The brain isn't rendering the city, it's just observing it.
That's mind-blowing. But, okay, let's look at the flip side. Because dropping the protective filter of waking reality introduces a massive vulnerability.
It really does.
If tuning the dial grants access to luminous realms and higher knowledge, logic dictates it also exposes you to the static, the interference, and the darker frequencies broadcasting on that spectrum.
This is the inherent risk of a permeable consciousness. We tend to assume that because something exists on a non-physical frequency, it must be enlightened or benevolent,
Like it's automatically angelic or something.
Exactly. But the universe is an ecosystem. Just as our physical ecosystem contains predators, parasites, and hostile environments, the energetic spectrum contains frequencies of profound density, fear, and malice.
Wow. Let's examine how this vulnerability plays out biologically through the phenomenon of sleep paralysis, because that's terrifying. We all know the clinical definition. The friction point where the waking mind boots up before the body's rematonia, which is the chemical mechanism that paralyzes your muscles so you don't act out your dreams, turns off.
Right, so you are awake, your eyes are open, but you are trapped inside a paralyzed body.
But the clinical model stops there. It categorizes the subsequent experiences, the overwhelming dread, the feeling of a crushing weight on the chest, the visual hallucinations of shadow figures, as merely a panicked brain trying to make sense of its paralysis.
Right, it's just written off as a harmless, albeit terrifying, neurological glitch.
But if we apply the frequency model, sleep paralysis isn't a glitch at all.
No, it's a dual state awareness. Your physical eyes are open and processing the dense reality of your bedroom, but your biological dial, which is still bathed in the neurochemistry of sleep, is stuck halfway between stations.
So you're straddling two worlds.
Yes. You are simultaneously perceiving the Earth frequency and the adjacent energetic frequencies. You are perceiving what is always occupying the space around you, but is usually invisible to the heavily filtered waking mind.
And the specific nature of what people perceive during sleep paralysis is heavily documented and undeniably consistent across demographics.
It's terrifyingly consistent.
The cross-cultural uniformity is what breaks the clinical panic hallucination theory for me entirely. We are talking about millions of people globally. Whether you are a secular accountant in Manhattan or a farmer in rural Vietnam, the specific archetypes are identical.
Always the same figures.
Yes. The tall, faceless shadow man standing in the doorway, the old hag perched on the chest, restricting breath, the presence of something lurking just at the periphery of vision with red, luminescent eyes. A random neural misfire doesn't organically invent the exact same specific demon for a Japanese teenager and a Norwegian businessman.
It just doesn't make sense statistically. And speaking of the Norwegian case, that specific anecdote from the text highlights the bridge between subjective terror and physical physics.
Oh yes, the man who attempted to document his sleep paralysis. That story is wild.
It really is. So he was suffering from chronic episodes, always accompanied by the distinct feeling of a hostile presence entering his room.
Right.
So he decides to set up high-definition cameras and highly sensitive audio recording equipment. The next morning, he reviews the data. Visually, the footage shows nothing. The room is completely empty.
Nothing on camera.
Nothing. But the audio data is where it gets chilling. At the exact timestamp where his biometric monitors indicated the onset of the paralysis, the exact moment he subjectively felt the entity enter the room, the audio recorder captured a distinct, low-pitched electromagnetic hiss.
Wow.
This is where Tesla's electromagnetism becomes highly relevant. An entity operating on a non-physical frequency wouldn't reflect photons, right? Which is why the camera lens captures nothing.
Yeah, makes sense.
But a frequency is still energy. It's still an electromagnetic wave. When a dense, highly charged energetic field intersects with our physical environment, it causes electromagnetic interference.
So the microphone caught the friction.
Exactly. The audio equipment was acting as an antenna, picking up the friction of that frequency entering the physical space. The hiss wasn't the sound of a voice. It was the acoustic translation of an energetic disruption.
But let me play devil's advocate here and push back on this, using the concept of predictive coding. You mentioned the kaneshibari effect in Japan, where cultural belief in binding spirits heavily correlates with experiencing those specific spirits during paralysis.
Right, the cultural expectation.
Yeah, so if I grew up being told that demons sit on people's chests at night, and I wake up paralyzed and terrified, isn't my brain just using predictive coding? Isn't just taking the raw data of fear and paralysis and rapidly painting a culturally appropriate demonic skin over it to make sense of the sensory input? Doesn't the belief create the monster?
That is absolutely the most robust psychological counter-argument, but it doesn't entirely negate the frequency model. It actually refines it.
How so?
Let's separate the signal from the translation. The raw data, the terrifying, dense, energetic frequency, is objective. It is the real signal being received. However, the human brain still has to render that data into a visual format the conscious mind can process. Predictive coding is simply the rendering software.
So the signal is real, but the avatar it wears is supplied by my cultural database.
Exactly. A secular individual encounters that dense frequency and their brain, lacking a spiritual vocabulary, might render it as an abstract void or an intruder in a ski mask or just a formless, suffocating shadow.
Right.
But a person steeped in Japanese folklore encounters the exact same energetic frequency, and their brain pulls from its database to render it as a kaneshibari spirit. The cultural skin is subjective, but the underlying energetic entity broadcasting that hostility is objectively present on the dial.
Which means the threat isn't imaginary, it's real energy. But here's the critical pivot in the text. We are not helpless receivers. If the brain is an antenna, we also possess the capacity to transmit.
We can broadcast back?
Yes. We can alter our own frequency to change the broadcast, and the ultimate arena for this is lucid dreaming.
Lucid dreaming is just incredible. It's the profound realization that the self is separate from the environment. When you become lucid, you realize, oh, I am dreaming.
You wake up inside the dream.
Right. And the moment that cognitive shift occurs, the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for logic, self-awareness, and executive function, rapidly powers up while the rest of the brain remains immersed in the dream frequency.
And the statistics regarding how people enter this state are fascinating, because a significant percentage of highly experienced lucid dreamers actually use sleep paralysis as their primary launch pad.
They dive right through it.
Yeah, instead of fighting the paralysis, which only feeds fear into the system and solidifies the nightmare frequency, they practice radical acceptance. They just relax into the paralysis.
Which goes against every instinct.
Totally. But the moment they drop the fear, the heavy weight evaporates, the shadow entities dissolve, and they plop directly into a fully conscious, highly controllable lucid dream.
It's a masterclass in vibrational mechanics, because fear is a very dense, restrictive frequency. When you react to sleep paralysis with terror, you lock your dial onto that dense station, which is exactly why the shadow entities manifest.
You're tuning into their channel.
Yes. But when you consciously choose relaxation and curiosity over fear, you instantly elevate your internal frequency. The dial turns. You literally tune out the nightmare and tune into a frequency of absolute creative control.
It transforms the dream from this horror movie you're forced to watch into what we might call a spiritual laboratory. Because in the physical world, our creative power is heavily buffered by matter and gravity.
Right, things take time here.
Exactly. If I want to build a house, it takes months of physical labor to manipulate the dense materials. But in a lucid dream, the environment isn't made of matter, it's made of responsive energy.
You are operating in an environment of immediate neuroenergetic feedback. Your expectation instantly dictates the reality. If you expect the floor to hold you, it does. If you expect to phase through the wall, you do.
I want to highlight the story of the man in Brazil from the text because it perfectly illustrates the neuroplastic power of this laboratory.
Oh, that's a brilliant example.
Yeah. So this man suffered from severe, debilitating nightmares of being hunted. Every single night, a monstrous threat would pursue him through these labyrinthine environments. He would wake up in a state of clinical panic, and this chronic sleep deprivation was just destroying his waking life.
He was caught in a continuous loop of fear conditioning.
Exactly. The fear circuit in his amygdala was just constantly firing. But he begins training in lucid dreaming. Finally, during one of the nightmare pursuits, his prefrontal cortex comes online. He becomes lucid.
He realizes it's a dream.
Right. He realizes the monster isn't a physical threat. And instead of continuing to run, which only reinforces the fear response, he stops. He turns around to face the entity.
That takes so much courage.
It really does.
Yeah.
And rather than attacking it, he simply wills himself to lift off the ground and fly above it.
And the physiological implications of that choice are staggering.
Because it wasn't just a cool dream sequence. By consciously choosing agency over fear in that hyper-vivid state, he essentially performed self-administered neuroplastic surgery.
Wow, yeah.
He broke the conditioned fear loop in his amygdala.
Yeah.
The nightmares permanently stopped. But more importantly, his waking life transformed. The chronic anxiety that plagued his waking hours completely dissolved.
He utilized the permeability of the dream state to essentially rewrite his baseline frequency. If we look at this through Tesla's lens, the waking world and the dream world are not hermetically sealed off from one another.
They bleed into each other.
They bleed into each other. If you can conquer a dense frequency in the non-physical realm, you inoculate yourself against it in the physical realm.
Think about how this applies to your daily life. Like, how often do you experience a waking form of paralysis? Not literally demons on your chest, but the paralysis of hesitation.
Right, the fear of making a move.
Exactly. The fear of leaving a toxic job, the dread of confrontation, the anxiety of failure. We freeze. What if the universe is actively utilizing the dream state as a low-stakes, high-impact simulator?
That makes so much sense.
Right. It's throwing you into these intense emotional scenarios at night to train your consciousness to choose agency over panic, so that when you face friction during the day, your baseline reflex is empowerment.
It posits that the primary function of dreaming is evolutionary training for the soul. But this brings up a really profound temporal problem.
How so?
Well, if we are navigating these real energetic spaces and manipulating our future emotional baselines, when are these events actually taking place?
We have to completely shatter our concept of time.
Yes, we do.
Because we inherently view time through a Newtonian lens, right? Like a straight linear track.
Yeah.
The past is a locked room behind us, the present is the hallway we are walking through, and the future is an unbuilt room ahead of us.
But physics, specifically concepts akin to the block universe theory and Tesla's own vibrational models, suggest time doesn't work like that at all.
Not even a little bit.
Linear time is a perceptual illusion required by our dense biological hardware. In a purely vibrational model, time is not a line, it is a dimensional field. The past, the present, and the potential futures all exist simultaneously.
That's so hard to wrap your head around.
It is. They are overlapping waves in an infinite energetic ocean. The only reason we experience them sequentially is because our physical brains can only process one slice of the wave at a time.
But when the waking filter drops during sleep, consciousness is no longer strictly bound to the present moment slice of the wave. The antenna can pick up signals from further down the field.
Right.
And this is the exact mechanism behind precognitive dreaming.
Precognition is heavily stigmatized in mainstream science, yet the historical documentation is so robust. If time is a vibrational field, a precognitive dream is simply your consciousness, tuning into the energetic signature of a highly probable future event before the physical shockwave of that event reaches your localized point in space-time.
The historical examples are undeniably compelling.
Yeah.
Let's look at Mark Twain.
Yes, the Mark Twain story.
Long before he was a literary icon, Twain had an incredibly vivid, hyper-specific dream. He dreamt of his brother Henry. In the dream, Henry was lying in a metallic coffin, which was highly unusual for the era.
Very unusual.
He was dressed in a very specific suit belonging to Twain, and resting on Henry's chest was a single red rose.
It wasn't a symbolic dream, it was a photorealistic preview.
Exactly. It was so disturbing that Twain actually documented it heavily. A few weeks later, Henry was working on a steamboat, the Pennsylvania, when the boilers exploded. Henry was severely injured and died shortly after.
It's so tragic.
And when Twain arrived at the funeral parlor, the scene was a flawless one-to-one recreation of the dream. The citizens of Memphis had taken up a collection and bought a metallic coffin. The undertaker had dressed Henry in Twain's suit.
And the rose.
Right. As Twain stood there, completely paralyzed by the realization of his dream, a woman he didn't know walked in and laid a single red rose on Henry's chest.
Under a linear model of time, that sequence of events is a statistical impossibility. It forces you to write it off as an astronomical coincidence.
But under the frequency model.
Under the frequency model, the explosion of the Pennsylvania and Henry's death generated a massive energetic wave. That wave rippled backward through the temporal field. Twain's sleeping consciousness, functioning as a highly sensitive antenna, simply caught the ripple before the physical timeline caught up.
But this introduces a massive philosophical headache regarding free will.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if Twain saw the future perfectly, it means the future was already written. Let's modernize this dilemma for the listener. Say you have an intensely vivid dream that you are fired from your job. Your boss calls you in, uses specific language, hands you a box, and walks you out.
And you wake up terrified.
Right. You wake up gripped by a very real somatic anxiety.
The body keeps the score of the dream. Your cortisol is completely spiking.
Exactly. So you carry that cortisol into the office. You are paranoid. You misinterpret an email. You snap at a coworker. Your performance completely tanks because you are vibrating at a frequency of profound insecurity.
And then what happens?
2 weeks later, your boss calls you in and fires you, exactly as it happened in the dream. So here's the paradox from the text. Did the dream act as a passive window, merely showing you a fixed future event? Or did the dream actively infect you with the frequency of failure, tricking you into manifesting that reality?
That's the core of it. Did the dream predict the firing, or did the dream cause it?
Yes.
This touches on the concept of retrocausality and quantum probability. In a vibrational universe, the future is not a single fixed point, it is a spectrum of probabilities. The dream of getting fired wasn't a definitive sentence. It was a preview of a highly probable outcome based on your current energetic trajectory.
It's like reading the algorithm of your life.
Exactly. It's a cosmic GPS system saying, recalculating. If you maintain this current frequency of stress and avoidance, this destination is inevitable. The precognitive dream is a warning system. If you wake up from that dream, recognize the density of the fear, and actively choose to shift your daytime frequency if you double down on your focus, communicate clearly with your boss, and maintain a high vibration work ethic, you steer your consciousness onto a different probability wave.
So the event in the dream never densifies into physical reality.
Exactly. You change the channel.
So we're utilizing the dream state to navigate the temporal field, scouting potential futures. But time isn't the only boundary we cross. The sheer alien nature of some dream environments suggests we aren't just time traveling, we are dimension hopping.
Which brings us to the intersection of dreaming and the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics.
Let's unpack the phenomenon of the recurring unfamiliar home. I know people, and I've actually experienced this myself, who have a secondary life running parallel to their waking one.
Yeah, the alternate life dream.
Right. You dream repeatedly of a specific city layout. You know where the bakery is, you know the shortcut through the alley, you know the layout of a house you've never physically set foot in. And the emotional resonance is bizarre. You feel an intense nostalgia for this place. It feels like home.
Well, the brain is remarkably efficient. It doesn't spontaneously generate and rigorously maintain complex, consistent architectural continuity across years of dreaming just for entertainment.
Exactly. The theory here is that your consciousness is untethered enough during REM sleep to slip laterally into the multiverse. You are dropping in on parallel iterations of your own existence.
It's fascinating.
Somewhere in the infinite spectrum of frequencies, there is a reality where you did move to that city, where you did buy that house. And because consciousness isn't bound by local space-time, your antenna is occasionally picking up the broadcast of that parallel life.
And this explains the profound emotional hangovers we sometimes experience. Have you ever woken up mourning a relationship with someone who doesn't exist?
Oh, yes. It's awful.
You live an entire lifetime in a dream with a partner. You experience deep, authentic love, maybe you raise children, and then you wake up in your actual bed, and the profound grief of losing them is just crushing.
It takes days to shake off that grief. It feels like an actual death.
Because on an energetic level, it was real. The physical bodies may reside in a parallel dimension, but the energetic exchange of love, the shared frequency of that bond, was genuinely experienced by your consciousness.
So the emotion was authentic.
Absolutely. The soul does not require physical matter to validate an experience. If the frequency of love was exchanged, the connection is eternally logged in your energetic signature.
But this leads to the most frustrating question of all. If we are doing all this, if we are conquering demons, navigating the multiverse, previewing the future, and experiencing profound multidimensional love, why the hell do we wake up and forget 90% of it within 3 minutes?
Right. It seems so unfair.
The rapid deterioration of dream memory feels like a cruel design flaw.
It's known as the Great Forgetting. And there are two layers to understanding why this happens: the neurobiological and the mystical. Biologically, memory consolidation is a physical process. The theory of synaptic homeostasis suggests that during sleep, the brain actively prunes synaptic connections to clear out the sheer volume of chaotic sensory data we accumulate.
Okay.
If you perfectly recorded every single detail of a multidimensional dream state alongside your waking memories, your hippocampus would be fundamentally overwhelmed.
It's a hard drive management system. If you try to run multiple, infinitely expansive operating systems on limited RAM, the entire system crashes. You wouldn't be able to distinguish between a memory of a parallel life and the memory of where you left your car keys.
Precisely. The forgetting is a biological firewall designed to maintain your localized sanity. But mystically, the Great Forgetting serves a crucial purpose in the evolution of consciousness. It acts as a deliberate veil of amnesia.
A cosmic censorship.
Yes. Your consciousness specifically tuned into the dense, difficult frequency of Earth to learn, to experience friction, to understand limitation. If you woke up every morning with total crystalline recall of your infinite nature, if you explicitly remembered the vastness of the multiverse and the luminous realms, the physical world would lose all its stakes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Why would you care about paying rent or resolving a conflict with a friend if you intimately remembered that you are an eternal, multidimensional being? The veil forces you to take the Earth game seriously.
It maintains the immersion of the simulation. But the brilliant caveat here is that the amnesia is only cognitive, not somatic.
Exactly.
Your brain forgets the visual data, like the layout of the house, the face of the entity, but your body retains the energetic upgrade.
Yeah.
The feeling, the lesson, the shift in your baseline frequency survives the transition to waking life.
It stays with you.
You wake up with a new intuition, or a sudden unblocking of creativity, or a subtle sense of peace. The software was updated in the background, even if you don't remember the download screen.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. The energetic upgrade is permanent.
So, how do we actively participate in this? If the veil is there by design, but Tesla proved we can manipulate the dial to peek behind it, how can we leverage this practically? We need to move from theory to application.
Yes, we do.
The text gives us a literal blueprint. We have a specific 7-step framework for conscious dreaming that outlines the mechanics of tuning the antenna.
The goal here is to bridge the gap between the unconscious receiver and the conscious navigator. And it begins with the concept of intention.
Step 1, intention, which requires a matter behavioral shift. Because most of us treat sleep as a surrender to exhaustion.
We really do. We just crash.
We fall into bed, scroll on our phones, and just pass out. We treat the transition state like a garbage chute. If you want to utilize the antenna, you have to actively set the dial before the system powers down. This is exactly what Tesla did. You state a clear, specific intention. I need the solution to this creative block. I want to understand the source of my chronic anxiety.
You are priming the reticular activating system in your brain. You are giving the unconscious mind a specific target frequency to scan for once the waking filter drops. But setting the intention is useless if you don't build the infrastructure to catch the data, which is why step 2, aggressive journaling, is non-negotiable.
Because the great forgetting begins the millisecond your eyes open. If you move your body, if you look at your phone, the RAM is wiped.
It's gone.
You have to keep a journal physically touching your bed. And the critical mechanism here isn't writing a beautifully structured narrative. It's capturing raw data. Even if you wake up with just an emotion, felt green, was running, you write it down.
The physical act of writing signals to the unconscious mind that the waking mind values the data. Over time, you build a neurobridge. The unconscious stops aggressively wiping the cache because it recognizes the conscious mind is actively requesting the files.
Okay, step 3. To build on that bridge, we have to talk about disrupting predictive processing through reality checks. This is the mechanical hack to induce lucid dreaming. Because the dreaming brain is an incredible rendering engine, but it struggles with complex, stable data strings like text or digital clocks.
Right. It lacks the localized continuity of the physical world.
Exactly. So during your waking day, you create a habit of questioning reality. You look at a digital clock, look away, and look back. In the physical world, the numbers remain stable. But if you do this enough, it becomes muscle memory, and eventually you will perform that exact check while dreaming.
And that's when it glitches.
You'll look at a clock in a dream, look away, and look back, and the numbers will scramble into alien symbols. That glitch in the rendering engine is what jolts your prefrontal cortex awake. You realize the physics here are wrong. I am dreaming.
And once you establish that lucidity, you move to step 4, symbolic interpretation. You have to understand the language of the realm. The cosmic broadcast doesn't usually communicate in literal English. It communicates in the language of symbolism and limbic resonance.
This is where people get tripped up all the time. They dream of their teeth falling out and think it's a precognitive warning about a dental emergency.
It's almost never literal.
Right. It's not literal. You have to treat the dream as a metaphorical mirror. Teeth falling out is a universal symbol for a loss of control or anxiety about appearance. Dreaming of death is almost never a literal death prediction. It's the energetic symbol for profound transformation, the shedding of an old identity.
You have to analyze the emotional core of the symbol, not the literal visual. And this leads directly into step 5, vibrational alignment. If you decode a dream and realize it was a broadcast of deep insecurity, you cannot just passively observe it. The dream is a diagnostic tool showing you the frequency you are currently radiating.
Right, the GPS warning. If you wake up from a frequency of lack, you must actively intervene in your waking state. You have to aggressively practice gratitude or mindfulness during the day to manually shift your frequency away from the lack you previewed in the dream. You use the nighttime diagnostic to course correct the daytime broadcast.
Absolutely, and you shouldn't do this in a vacuum. Step 6 is sharing. Sharing these experiences is a vital component of the practice.
When you begin discussing these deep dream states with trusted people, you quickly realize how interconnected the antenna network is. You find that you and a friend are navigating similar archetypal landscapes or encountering identical symbols.
It validates the objective reality of the frequencies you are exploring.
It really does. It pulls the experience out of the realm of my crazy brain and into our shared energetic environment.
Finally, step 7, spiritual practice. The entire process requires a ritualistic respect for the transition. You cannot expect to tune into profound cosmic frequencies if your nervous system is agitated by the artificial frequencies of blue light and digital media right up until the moment you close your eyes.
The environment matters so much. Dimming the lights, dropping the temperature, actively down-regulating your nervous system from a high beta stress wave into a calm alpha state. You're literally preparing a runway for your consciousness to detach smoothly.
Consistency in these practices fundamentally rewires how you interact with the third of your life you spend asleep.
The static begins to clear. What was once a chaotic jumble of fragmented hallucinations slowly clarifies into a navigable, high-definition interface with the broader universe.
It really does.
I mean, think about the magnitude of what we've discussed today. Tesla reached into the unseen ether, tuned his mental dial, and pulled out the blueprints for the modern electrical grid. She altered the physical destiny of humanity using the dream state.
He changed the world.
And the exact same ether, the exact same infinite cosmic library is sitting right there waiting for you every single night. The architecture for emotional healing, creative breakthroughs, and spiritual evolution is freely broadcasting. You just have to learn how to catch the signal.
It demands a complete surrender of the idea that physical reality is the absolute ceiling of human experience.
Which brings us to the ultimate paradigm shift of this entire deep dive. Sleep is not a biological pause. It is a dimensional portal. The brain is not a closed-loop generator. It is a cosmic antenna.
And waking life, this dense, rule-bound reality we take so seriously, is not the absolute reality.
It's not. It is just one specific, localized frequency on an infinite dial. And if we follow this logic to its absolute conclusion, it profoundly reframes our concept of mortality. Because if consciousness exists independent of the physical hardware, then death doesn't actually exist.
Right.
Death is simply the moment the biological dial breaks and the consciousness permanently retunes to the broader spectrum. You don't end, you just drop the filter.
It's an incredibly liberating framework, but I want to expand on the concept of waking life as just another frequency because it invites a staggering hypothetical.
Okay.
We discussed how lucid dreaming works, how realizing you are in a dream instantly grants you the power to manipulate the energetic environment, to rewrite the rules, to fly instead of run.
The realization of the illusion shatters the constraints of the illusion.
Precisely. Now, extrapolate that to the Earth frequency. If our waking life is truly just a dense collective dream that billions of biological antennas are currently tuned into, what happens if a critical mass of humanity becomes lucid while awake?
Oh, wow.
What happens if we collectively realize that we are the broadcasters, that our localized frequency dictates the physical reality around us? Are we currently just sleepwalking through our waking existence, passively enduring the nightmares of scarcity, conflict, and limitation, simply because we don't realize we are dreaming?
That is profound. What happens to the rigid laws of physics or the structures of human suffering if humanity finally wakes up inside the waking dream?
If the Brazilian man could learn to fly in his private dream, what could a collectively lucid humanity achieve in the shared dream?
That is the exact question I want you to carry with you tonight. Are we just waiting to wake up while we're already awake? I want to know how this resonates with your own experiences. Have you navigated that terrifying friction of sleep paralysis and heard the hiss? Have you lived an alternate life in a recurring dream city or caught a precognitive echo of a future event before it arrived? Document those anomalies. Treat them as data. And tonight, when you lie down and the silence settles in, actively choose your frequency. Set your intention. Because tonight, you aren't just powering down, you're opening the gate. Sleep well and wake up.